You think you know the history of KFC, right? You see the bucket, the smiling old man, and you think, that's just a sweet grandpa. Wrong. You don't know the half of it. Did you know that the real history of Kentucky Fried Chicken involves violent shootouts on the highway? It involves armed standoffs with family members, total bankruptcy, and years of homelessness. If I read you Harland Sanders' resume without telling you his name, you'd think I was talking about a chaotic movie character, not a fast food icon. We're talking about a guy who was fired from almost every job he ever touched. A guy with a temper so bad it caused constant trouble. A guy who was dead broke at age 65. So how did a disaster of a man turn a $105 welfare check into a global empire? And why did it take him a lifetime to do it? Buckle up, because the true story of the Colonel is definitely on the menu. Now, to really get this guy, we have to go back, way back, to September 9th, 1890, Henryville, Indiana. Harland was the oldest of 3 kids. And honestly, life was pretty normal until 1895, when Harland was just 5 years old. His dad, Wilbur, came home one day with a severe fever. It happened so fast. By the afternoon, he had passed away. Can you imagine that? Just like that, at age 5, Harland became the man of the house. His mom, Margaret, had to take a job peeling tomatoes at a canning factory just to keep them alive. So while other kids were out playing tag or hiding in treehouses, Harland Sanders, 7 years old, was inside baking bread and catching fish for his siblings, Clarence and Catherine. By age 7, he was already a master at cooking country cuisine. I mean, at 7, I was still eating dirt. This kid was running a kitchen. But in 1902, his mom remarried, and the stepfather, William Broadus, bad dude. He didn't like Harland. He kicked the boy around. Harland wasn't having it. In 1902, at age 12, he dropped out of school. He told people later it was because he couldn't get the hang of the algebra, but come on, we know the truth. He was escaping. He got his first job as a farmhand for a guy named Henry Monk. The pay? A massive $2 a month. And guess what? He got fired almost immediately. Why? Because instead of working, he spent all day staring at the birds in the trees. Harland Sanders? Nature lover, terrible employee.
So this kicked off what I call the drifting years. In 1906, at 16, he lied about his age to join the army. He got shipped all the way to Cuba. Now, you might picture him storming a beach with a rifle. Nope, he was a mule handler. He spent 4 months shoveling manure in the tropical heat. He was honorably discharged, probably because the mules were sick of him. He landed in Alabama and met Josephine King. He married her in 1909. He was 19. They had 3 kids, Margaret, Harland Jr., and Mildred. But Harland, the guy was a disaster. He worked as a blacksmith's helper, he cleaned ash pans on trains, he became a fireman shoveling coal. But his temper was legendary. In 1915, he got fired from the Illinois Central Railroad for brawling with a colleague. Shocking, I know. This instability drove Josephine crazy. She took the kids and moved back to her parents' house, and this is where it gets wild. Harland didn't send flowers to apologize. No, he traveled to her parents' house and hid in the woods, plotting to snatch his own children back. He was lurking in the bushes waiting for the right moment, but his father-in-law stepped onto the porch with a loaded shotgun. It was a standoff. Harland stared him down. The shotgun won. Harland retreated. Josephine eventually went back to him, but let's just say, the marriage was rocky. And, well, he tried to reinvent himself. He studied law by correspondence. He actually became a lawyer in Little Rock in 1915. He was doing great. For about 3 years. In 1918, he was in court, and he got into a huge argument with his own client. He physically assaulted the guy right in the middle of the courtroom. Bam! Disbarred. career over. Pro tip, don't knock out the person who is paying you. That's just not right. He bounced around after that. But here is the crazy part. He hit the jackpot. In 1920, he spotted a gap in the market. He hustled, gathered investors, and launched a steamboat ferry line on the Ohio River. And for the first time in his life, he was crushing it. It was a successful business. He was making real money. For exactly 2 years. Then the government announced they were building a massive bridge right next to his route. So why would anyone take a slow boat when they can drive? Yet again, unfortunately for Harland, the business crashed. He cashed out his shares and walked away. But fortunately, Harland was a workaholic who juggled multiple ventures. He didn't just sit around while the ferry business was booming. He tried 2 other jobs at that exact same time. First, he tried to launch a manufacturing company making acetylene lamps. It was a bright idea. Until the electric light bulb took over the market a year later. Suddenly, no one needed gas lamps. That business went dark immediately. As for the other job he was juggling, now here is a weird one. From 1921 to 1923, while living in Indiana, he actually worked as an amateur midwife. There were no doctors in the rural area, so Harland Sanders was delivering babies. Add that to the resume. He stopped doing that in 1924 when he moved to Kentucky to take a job selling Michelin tires, which, of course, he lost after crashing his car into a bridge.
So after that, he ended up in Corbin, Kentucky, 1930. He was running a Shell gas station in a spot so rough the locals called it Hell's Half Acre. He dragged his dining table to the front and sold ham and steak to truckers. Notice I didn't mention chicken. That's because frying chicken took 30 minutes. Truckers don't have that kind of patience. But there was a rival, Matt Stewart. He ran the Standard Oil station down the road. Stewart was jealous. He kept painting over Harland's signs. Harland threatened to blow his head off. You know, standard business practices back in the 1930s, I guess. One day in 1931, Harland heard Stewart was at it again. He grabbed 2 Shell managers, including a guy named Robert Gibson. They rushed to the scene. Stewart pulled a pistol. Bang! He shot Robert Gibson straight in the heart. Gibson didn't make it. Sanders grabbed Gibson's gun and returned fire. He shot Stewart in the shoulder. Police sirens wailed. Matt Stewart went to jail for murder. Sanders was cleared on self-defense. With the competition literally eliminated, business boomed.
But the real heartbreak happened in 1932. His son, Harland Jr., went in for a routine tonsillectomy. Something went wrong. Complications set in. And tragically, Harland Jr. didn't survive. He was only 20. Sanders was 42. He had failed at every job. He had a broken marriage. And now he had lost his son. He was a bitter, angry man.
You know, to a point, I can actually empathize with Harland, because life really has a way of throwing some serious curveballs at some people. Don't you think? Anywho, 5 years after that, in 1937, he expanded. He bought the property across the street and built Sanders Court and Cafe.
Now let's talk about the chicken. Frying it in a pan was just too slow. In 1939, he saw a new invention, the pressure cooker. It was meant for beans. Harland thought, I bet I can put boiling oil in that thing. This was basically a kitchen bomb. If the lid blew, you were done for. But he tweaked the valves, and it worked. Chicken in 9 minutes. In 1940, he perfected the 11 herbs and spices, mixing them on the concrete floor so no one could steal the recipe. In 1947, he finally divorced Josephine. In 1949, he married Claudia Price, who helped him run the shop. In 1950, the governor recommissioned him as a Kentucky colonel. Harland decided to commit to the bit. He grew the goatee, he bleached it white, he bought the white suit. He literally never wore regular clothes again. So you would think, yes, he finally made it. He owned a motel and a restaurant. He was set for life, right? Nah, in 1955 came yet another obstacle. The government built Interstate 75. It bypassed his town by 7 miles, and his customers vanished overnight. He had no choice but to auction off everything to pay off his debts. So, at age 65, Harland Sanders was once again broke. He was living on a Social Security check of $105 a month. Most guys would quit, but not Harland. He grabbed a pressure cooker and a bag of spices. He threw them in his Ford. He slept in the back seat with Claudia. He drove across the country. He walked into diners and said, "Let me cook for you. If you like it, pay me a nickel per chicken." He was rejected 1,009 times. Wow, can you imagine that? 1,009 rejections. I would have just gone in a corner and cried. But on number 1,010, it was not a rejection, it was a yes by Pete Harmon in Utah. Fortunately, in 1952, Harmon became the first franchisee. Harmon hired a sign painter by the name of Don Anderson. I bet you did not know this one. Don was the guy who said, "Hey, let's call it Kentucky Fried Chicken." He's also the guy who invented the bucket. Boom! You see, you learn something new every day. The bucket boom was real. By 1964, there were 600 locations. At age 74, Sanders sold the U.S. company to investors John Y. Brown Jr. and Jack Massey. The price? A whopping $2 million. And, well, he kept the Canada rights and stayed on as the mascot. But Harland hated what they did to his food. He would visit KFCs in his white suit and just scream at the staff. He told the newspaper that the new gravy tasted like wallpaper paste and sludge. He was so mad, he opened a competitor restaurant called the Colonel's Lady. KFC sued him. He was sued by the company that owned his own face. They settled for $1 million, but Harland made his point.
To this day, the recipe is a secret. It's in a digital vault in Louisville. One company blends half the spice, another company blends the other half. A computer mixes them. No human knows the whole thing. Harland Sanders worked until the very end. He passed away from leukemia on December 16, 1980. He was 90 years old. He was buried in his white suit. So, remember, Harland Sanders was a mule handler, a failed lawyer, a midwife, and a gunfighter. He didn't start frying chicken until he was 40. He didn't franchise until he was 62. He didn't become an icon until he was 75. It's never too late to start. Just maybe try not to shoot your competition. And there you have it, the true history of Colonel Harland Sanders' KFC.